Welcome and thank you for joining this month's discussion. Thank you to the Hurford Foundation for making this possible, to the audience watching us today, and of course to our panelists who will be sharing their insights and experiences with us this morning. My name is Margarita Valdes. I'm a youth anti-corruption activist from El Salvador. I work with the Democracy, Transparency, Justice Foundation, promoting a culture of transparency and social accountability in El Salvador. Currently, I'm a Hurford Fellow with the World Youth Movement for Democracy. During my time here in Washington, I will be conducting research and online discussions on ways to strengthen youth participation through anti-corruption initiatives. For today's discussion, we will focus on mechanisms online seeking offline accountability. Technology, the internet, and social media have changed the way in which new generations inform themselves and participate, and it is important to recognize the significance of online tools in the fight against corruption, as well as their potential in making governments and public officials more accountable. Today we will discuss such topics as well as evaluate the risks of online activism and how it might fall short of generating actual offline change. Each panelist will have 5 to 7 minutes for their initial presentation, and then I will open the floor to any questions or comments. To the audience, please feel free to send in any questions or comments through Twitter using the hashtag WYMDLive, and also you may follow us on Twitter under the username WYMD. I'd like to introduce our first panelist with this said, Kamil Gregor, a data analyst for kovolit.edu, a Czech and Slovak NGO which seeks to provide information from Parliament out to the public. Kamil, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hi, so I guess I have the time now to introduce my organization and my project, right? Okay,
yes.
So Kohovolit EU is an NGO that operates in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia since 2009. We started originally by developing voting advice applications, applications like Smart Vote or Vote Match that match users' political preferences with preferences of candidates and parties. And now we are more oriented to parliamentary monitoring and anti-corruption advocacy. And advocacy and application of open data, especially parliamentary open data. If I were just to list some of our online projects, apart from the voting advice application that we still develop, it's, for example, open spending project. It's opening and visualization of budgetary data. Then we have a Right to Them application. That's a website that searches representatives elected around the place where you live, and it manages your email communication with them. And we also publishes various reports on activity of MPs, their attendance, stuff like that. Recently, we joined a coalition called the Reconstruction of the State. It's a quite large advocacy platform of some 20 NGOs and businesses and other types of partners in the Czech Republic. The goal of the project is to push forward 9 very specific and realistic changes of key anti-corruption legislation that would significantly lower the level of state capture and systemic corruption in the country. The project basically has 3 phases. First, we did an extensive lobbying to get the legislation into the legislative process. Then we got as many MPs as possible to sign a written pledge to support these 9 legislative changes in Parliament. And now we are currently in the 3rd stage, where we basically are constructing a rank of MPs based on their actual support of the legislative changes in Parliament. And we are basically going to publicly shame those who don't support them. I have to say that now that the situation of the project was complicated due to external conditions, and especially we are going to have unexpectedly early elections in the country in about 2 or 3 months, which means that unfortunately most of the legislative proposals that we got into the legislative process will fall under the table once the parliament is dissolved. So we are shifting our focus to the electoral manifestos, to get to these changes into the manifestos, so that they could be introduced again in the next parliamentary term. So I guess that's would be my introduction.
Thank you, Kamil. I appreciate that. Next, we will be moving on. I would like to introduce you to Tijana Cvjeticanin, who is a research coordinator for a citizens association called Why Not? And she works in the areas of political accountability, citizen participation, peace, and anti-militarist activism. Tijana.
Hi. Well, our organization works primarily in the area of political accountability, and using online tools is a big part, and we are very much focused on this in this respect. What we do, the research that we do is based on researching of how much of the pre-election promises that the ruling parties gave in their programs prior to the elections they managed to accomplish during the term. And we started doing this in the last term for the years 2006 to 2010, and continued in this term. And this is a job which is very complicated in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we have very complicated structure of the government and administrative structure. We have like 5 levels of administration in the country, and the issue of political accountability is a very big question, because we are mostly witnessing forming of of coalitions in these different levels, which do not have anything in common. They do not have a common agenda. They just basically form them to kind of get in power. So the idea was to hold them accountable for what they promised to their voters prior to the elections, and this is what we do. And we use a website called Istinomjer in our language. It would be Truth Meter translated to English, where we have an account of all. At this moment, we have around 2,000 promises of 3 different governments on different levels of administration, and we monitor of how much of the promised they are accomplishing in this term. It's very little, as it was in the previous as well. Another thing where we used also online tools for kind of strengthening accountability and informing voters to make more informed and rational choices in the elections, we called Vote Meter or Glasometer, and this is the analysis of party programs and their stands on certain issues, which were then given in a form of a kind of a quiz to people who visited the website, so they can see where their preferences lie with compared to the parties in power, which is also an important thing in Bosnia, because the way that the campaigns are conducted before the elections have very little to do with actual programs and actual policies in different areas, such as, I don't know, economics or social policies and so on, and mostly have a lot to do with just like raising these national tensions before the election. So these 2 projects combined had the intention of shifting the focus from these like spectacular and very void in content techniques of political marketing and political doing politics, basically, and shift them to more substantial and more informed and more rational ways of seeing politics in the general public. We also have a project that is based online, which is called Fix My Constitution. Since constitutional reform is also a very big issue and an important topic in Bosnia, we kind of broke the 3 constitutions, one on the state level and 2 on the entity levels, into smaller units, and gave it to the people to have their saying on what do they like, what do they dislike, how do they think that the reform should go, which direction should it take. We also included a lot of proposals or amendments that have been so far circulated in the public or in the parliament, so that people can rate them in a way. So this is also another way to kind of strengthen the civic participation in the political processes, which is very low at the present time in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Well, first I would like to thank you guys for joining us once again and for these initial introductions. Real quick, I guess I would like to start off before Eric's having a little bit of technical issues, so we're working on that. So we'll continue the conversation, and once the problems have been fixed, he will be joining us again. But first, I would like to note, technology in recent years has become an unofficial channel where official information that should otherwise be already given to us by, governments, we're able to access this public information more freely, more fast, in a lot faster ways. And so I was wondering if you guys could help me out here. In your experiences, how has, access to information and technology and the internet shared the way in which you guys inform yourselves and participate, in anti-corruption initiatives and even just in politics on a daily life? So if you like, we can go ahead and start off with Kamil, and then we can go on with Tijana.
Okay, well, first of all, it depends on what kind of projects or activities you are doing. Obviously, some projects would be orders of magnitude lower in terms of social impact without, internet or even without social networks. So 10 years ago, for example, the voting advice applications that we do, or projects like political fact check that are very popular around social networks. And this is especially true in countries with limited freedom of press, basically. It seems to me that, if you look at countries that are transitioning to democracy right now, like China, for example, you see basically the same patterns of social change as you could have observed, say, in the Great Britain in 18th and 19th century. But thanks to the new technology is happening much more faster. So if you Chinese workers start using Twitter, they can set up an infrastructure of trade unions much faster than Englishmen could 200 years ago. What we use social networks especially for are two things that are not so common, talked about when people think and talk about these things, and it's feedback and crowdsourcing. So, for example, I keep getting back to this voting advice application because it's a nice example. So, for example, we regularly do crowdsourcing of questions or issues that people would like to get positions of parties or candidate on. So we, set up a Google form and open it for our followers to suggest what we should ask the parties. And we also use it to gather feedback. So, for example, last elections, we were gathering systematically Facebook posts about our application. We gathered several hundreds of them, and then our internship students basically read them and coded some notes that how the application should be improved and stuff like that. What I personally use the social networks for is for confronting myself with the opinions of people that don't agree with me, and I wouldn't normally get to meet, basically, because in the real world people tend to naturally surround themselves with friends, with similar opinions. But what I do on purpose is that I are looking for people that are on a different side of the political spectrum, so that I could, get outside the bubble that surrounds me, like in terms of ideas and opinions.
Thank you, Kamil, for your insights. I do agree with you. The internet and social media does create infrastructures and networks that are more easily and quickly available than in the past. It is also a very interesting way for which citizens to participate in democracy and also interact with their representatives or elected leaders as well. Tijana, would you like to provide your insight on this as well?
Well, regarding how the technology changed what we do, first side of that is that we have much easier access to information that we need. Since we are researching pretty much everything that the governments do, we need a lot of databases, like their laws, their decisions, and so on and so on. So having them, having their own websites with all these archives there, makes our work a lot faster and a lot easier. But on the other hand, open data approach is not that strong within our government. So this is also something that we intend to tackle in our future work and try to make some kind of initiatives for the governments to open their data more, so that it's out there for internet users to access. And regarding our work, it would be literally impossible without having a website, because the amount of information that we use and the amount of information and analysis that we derive from this initial data that we have is really, I don't even know how to translate it into pages or something like that. It would be impossible, practically impossible, to publish and distribute it regularly as we do now, because we have, as I said, around 2,000 pre-election promises that we are following, and each of these has its own mark, and each of these has its own explanation on why this mark has been given. So this is something that takes a lot of space, and we also, when you do it on the website, when you do it with the online technology, you can update it regularly, and it would be really hard to imagine how to do it in a printed version. So this is something that's essential for our work. Also, of course, this is the way that you can get, you can reach more people with what you find. But there's also a kind of a obstacle to this, because especially when it comes to young people, we don't see a lot of young people using internet to actually inform themselves. They use it mostly for fun and for communication. So this is something that's kind of missing. What is missing is this, we do have some feedback, but we would like to see it rising, you know, because you have to, we do try to reach people through social networks, because in Bosnia, for example, without having your Facebook page or something like that, you're not really going to get anywhere when it comes to, you know, inviting people to see your work. So this is something that we do use, but we also stick to some more traditional ways of informing people, like going through the traditional media such as television and print media, and we occasionally do kind of street campaigns where we literally take the laptops, put them out in the streets in several cities in Bosnia, and we invite people to see our findings or to fill these quizzes and see where their political stands are compared to the parties and so on and so on, which is, we feel that this is something that's needed, because not everyone is using online tools for getting informed or getting involved. So this is something that we still feel is needed to kind of inform the public more on what we do.
Thank you, Tijana, for that. Yes, we have seen, you know, technology has a great potential when paired, you know, with well-devised programs and plans. So I do feel it is important, you know, that the youth start using these tools not just for socializing, not just for entertainment, but for actually trying to create changes and beyond. And I would also like to apologize, because it seems that Eric has been having trouble with the connection, so he will not be able to continue this conversation with us today. He's not being able to log back on. Well, I wanted to move on to a second question, where we've seen, you know, in developing countries or in transitioning countries, we've seen, you know, a more frequent use of technology initiatives trying to create change offline. But it is important to recognize that while platforms may be built online, they don't necessarily always translate into change offline. So I was hoping we could talk a little bit about how you guys go about trying to breach that gap, you know, between online initiatives and governments and citizens offline, how to go about that change, how to really create practical changes out of something that comes online. We can go ahead and start with you, Tijana, if you like, and then we can go and keep on with Kamil.
Okay, well, we have a recent, very interesting example, which is not in like strict sense connected to our work as an organization, but we had these protests in June, I think, regarding this personal identification number, which Bosnia didn't have for a couple of months prior to the protests, which led to, you know, young baby, like newborn babies, not having their ID numbers, not having their health security, and not being able to leave the country for medical treatment, which was the reason why the protest started, because of one particular baby whose life was in danger because she couldn't leave the country. So this thing sparked a protest, which is, I think they were like the biggest protests we had in Bosnia for maybe since the war. And the thing was that it started actually from one particular Facebook status and comments that followed, and the group that was consequently formed. So this example was kind of a good example for both good and bad sides of technology and activism and online tools in activism. This thing started as one very furious comment of a friend of mine who said, "This is horrible, we cannot let this baby die, we have to do something." And a lot of people liked that, what he said. And then he invited us to this group, and we said, let's go and like park our cars in front of the parliament and block the parliament. And that's what we did. And this sparked the thing that lasted for a couple of weeks, and a lot of things happened following that. But and this was something that had a clear, this was an online action that had a clear and direct impact to offline world, because we made the Council of Ministers make this temporary decision that will allow children to have their numbers for the next 6 months. We did not manage to make them pass the law, but that's something that we did do. On the other hand, what I see as a downside to this, the page which we made after these protests was followed by around 25,000 people, which is a very, very high number for Bosnia. But on the protests itself, I don't think we ever had more than like 10,000 people on maybe 2 occasions. So this was not translated into their online presence. Like their offline presence and the offline presence, the online presence was amazing. We had so much, messages of support and comments, and people were sending pictures from all over the world, and the Facebook was like really burning with this JMBG protest hashtags and statuses and comments and so on. But in real life, this did not translate to this action this massive as it was on the internet. So I think that this is one effect that online activism has, which is not a positive one, is that you feel that you've done something and accomplished something just by doing this, just by commenting or clicking like or sharing it or sending your picture, which I'm not dismissing these things as irrelevant, but I think that a lot of people just stop at that. They do not make that another step, in this offline life to kind of put it into action. So I think that these protests were a very good example of both good and bad in how online transponds to offline activism.
Thank you, Tijana. That was very insightful. I do agree with you. Sometimes people don't realize that just clicking like or just giving a retweet, they think that is enough. When you actually do have to, work online, but also go about and do something offline as well that creates change. Kamil, I don't know if you have any insights on this as well.
Well, I can give you our example. What I see also as a potential risk is that basically online tools and online communication is it's a strategy to achieve a goal, but there's a risk that this strategy could potentially turn into a goal itself. So what I mean by that is that if there's a risk that you would become obsessed or become obsessed about having as many followers, as many, keeping all these ratings high enough and stuff like that, so that it actually makes you distracted from the actual social impact. Because the truth is that it's the social impact of what we do is often unmeasurable, it's unobservable, and what is very easily measurable and is provided to us are these Facebook and Google Analytics tools that measure unique a number of visitors and stuff like that, and people try to focus very heavily on that. And what I got an email yesterday basically from a company that provides us a service of basically funding through text messages. It means that basically people send a text message and we get a text message and we get some funding from that. And the email says, look, you don't have enough text messages supporting you. You should do something about it. You should change your fundraising strategy. And my reaction was that, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change our activities just to fill this goal that itself is meaningless, you know. So I would say that all these tools of online communication and online activisms must remain just a tool and not an abstract goal itself.
Thank you, Kamil. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you. I wanted you to talk a little bit about this initiative, Reconstructing the State. Constructing the Czech state. I know that it involves 9 different proposals that would lower corruption levels in the country. And so I was kind of hoping you could share a little bit on how you guys came about this initiative, how did you guys get started, why, what your objectives are with it, how many people you intend to reach, or how you intend to reach people through it.
Okay, so basically, it started as an idea among 3 biggest NGOs in the Czech Republic that deal with corruption. The only one that's known outside the country is Transparency International. And the basic idea is that if you look at the problem of state capture and really high-level political corruption in the Czech Republic, it's very bad, even by international standards. And the thing is that we know, and by we I mean anti-corruption experts, civil society, and even the political parties and the political elite, what needs to be done. So if you look into manifestos of parties, if you look into policy papers and strategies, it's mostly all the things that needs to be changed in order to fight this problem effectively are there. And the only thing that's missing is the last step, and it's the implementation. So getting actually these changes into the legislative process. And this is where it always breaks down, because in the Czech Republic, due to several reasons, the legislative process takes quite a long time. And there are many ways how to kill a very good proposal without actually looking like a killer. So basically the only goal of the process of the project is to push these 9 key changes into the law, basically through the legislative process, and to keep public basically and media focused on this process, so that there's no way how to quietly push this legislation under the table. Yeah, so it's the immediate goal, and what I would like to stress out is that we chose basically the legislative changes were chosen so that it would really be realistic that we could pass them and we can get them through the legislative process in like 1 year. So they are not very ambitious. They are really like the first step. But it's something that the political parties could agree on, and it's something that we think that even those elected representatives that are either directly or indirectly involved in the systemic corruption would adapt, although it would be harmful to them if they feel there's a sufficient pressure from the public. Currently, as I said, the project is undergoing a major change because unexpectedly there will be early elections very soon. But I have to say, I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but I have to say that up to now we had 100% success rate, because out of the 9 proposals, 1 of them finished the legislative process and it was successful. So, I mean.
Thank you, Kamil. Thank you, and good luck with this project. I really hope that it works out. I think it would be groundbreaking for the fight on corruption. I think it would also be a great example for other countries to learn a lot from. Tijana, I wanted to ask you how you feel about this. Using the use of technology and social media is mostly associated with young people and, being on the go, and how we like our information a lot faster than having to sit down and read newspapers and stuff. So I was thinking, do you feel the use of technology is creating a divide between the goals of the youth who mostly use technology and other people who are not as in tune with technology? Or do you feel that eventually at one point we will all be able to work together with technology, online as well as offline, and have common goals?
Are you asking in terms of like generation gap between young
Yes.
people and the use basically how do like older generations use it? Okay, well, it's definitely that younger people are the ones who are more into technology, and they're much more quick to catch on what's new, what's fresh, what's happening, and so on. But I don't see it, at least not in our society. I don't see that it's influencing a lot of their, how to say, like, wish to get informed and to get involved. This is something that I think that technology itself is not going to change per se. It needs to be worked at on several levels, not just on the level of offering them the way to get informed and involved, but to kind of motivate them through different means as well. And when it comes to people who are not who do not fall into the youth group, I think that more and more people are using new technologies, and because it's just the way that I think it's just inevitably going that way. But as for Bosnia, in particular, we do not, like, a lot of research show that older people are still not too much into using, for example, internet as their primary source of information. It's still pretty much television, and newspapers come second, and then comes just like radio, internet, and so on. So this is one of the reasons that we try, like, to kind of move what we do from time to time from online to offline world, because we feel that way we can reach these generations as well, because we cannot count on them coming to us, so to say. So I think that it is moving that way, but it's moving much faster with the younger people and much slower with older generations who are still kind of, sticking with what they know and what they're used to. And of course, there's also an economic factor in this, because you have to take into account that those households who are poorer, some of them don't even own a computer, they don't have a way to connect, to get on the internet, to get online. And of course, we also have a major issue with an educational system which is really not functioning very well. So we have a lot of people who are not even functionally literate. So you cannot expect them to get, like, technologically literate if they're not if they didn't finished with the basic literacy. So these are all issues that needs to be thought of when thinking of using technologies, like that there are different target groups that you have to have in mind with presenting your research results or your invitations to participate in something that not everyone is gonna it's not gonna come to everyone equally, because not everyone has the same opportunities to be informed about these things.
Thank you, Tijana. I do agree with you. For example, in El Salvador, the people who have access to internet and social media is about 10% of the population. So when we do a lot of online activism, we cannot forget of the offline component, and having to also reach those people on the ground who don't necessarily have access, to social media, internet, computers, and things like that. So you can't lose that. You have to always keep that in mind, and when you're doing online campaigns as well. And also, I would like to remind the audience, to feel free to send in any questions or comments through our hashtag WYMDLive. I would also like to have another question. I have another question for you guys as well. When you do work on online campaigns and try to create this change, how do you guys involve new participants? How do you guys try to attract new participants to get involved in these things, in transparency initiatives, anti-corruption, and just in politics on a daily basis? If you want, Kamil, we can go ahead and start with you, and then we'll go on with Tijana.
Okay, well, we have an excellent example. within this Reconstruction of the State project. As I said, one of the stages in the project, or phases in the project, was to get as many members of the parliament to sign a written pledge. And we didn't have an operational capacity to actually meet all these MPs in person ourselves. So we got volunteers, and they did it basically. And so we did a small campaign to and we even wanted we didn't want ourselves to meet with the MPs. We wanted the MPs to meet their regular voters basically. So we wanted that the project go that the pledge wouldn't be presented by a professional activist, so to say, but from an ordinary people from the street. So we did a campaign to attract people, and what we the keystone of the campaign was a viral video, and it was quite effective because we intentionally made it controversial. We found out that actually Czech Republic scores lower in terms of corruption than Botswana, which is an African country. That it's being said it's one of the most developed African countries, and it's one of the countries where democracy works the best. But this is surprising to people in Europe if you say that your country is doing worse than Botswana, because Botswana, the stereotypes is that it must be a very primitive country. So we found a great guy, an actor who is African American, and he shot basically short video saying that the level of corruption in the Czech Republic is lower, is higher than Botswana, and this was very popular because of this hype, or this controversy. There was a debate even whether the video is racist. But it met the goal basically because it circulated through social media for some time, and we got sufficient volunteers to accomplish this task.
Thank you, Kamil. Tijana?
Okay, I have another example. This is not related directly to the political accountability focus of our work, but it is a campaign that we started along with the 24 other organizations from Bosnia, which formed together this coalition called Coalition Equality, and it's focused on the upcoming census in Bosnia. Bosnia didn't have a census of population and households since 1991, because in Bosnia it is a political question, and the one that has not been resolved until 2012, so 2011 actually, when the law was passed. So the thing is, just a short insight into the background of the campaign. Bosnia's constitution in some areas does not recognize anyone but Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks. These are the constituent peoples, and there are certain positions in the government and in the parliament that you cannot run for unless you're a member of one of those three constituent peoples. So the country was sued by two people, one of Roma and one of Jewish descent, for discrimination, for not being able to run for the presidency. And they won the case, and the European Court for Human Rights said that Bosnia needs to change its constitution to eliminate this discrimination from it. This so far hasn't happened, also because of the political reasons and political disagreements between mostly these ethno-national parties. So the census, which is going to be conducted in October, for us, because we're working actively on this issue of reforming the constitution so the discrimination is eliminated, we saw it as a good chance to kind of promote this idea that we need to be citizens who are equal in front of the country and in the eyes of the constitution, rather than just members of these ethnic and national groups. So we started this campaign called Be a Citizen, and the campaign was in a form of like a photo campaign where people send their pictures saying that, like, I'm Bosnian, I'm I don't know, a citizen of Bosnia, I mean, there were a lot of like different messages, such like I'm an alien or I'm a human being, and so on and so on. The idea was to show that these three identities are not the only identities that people in Bosnia possess, and that everyone who does not fall into these categories should not be discriminated in the constitution. So this is something that we needed. we needed these strategies how to mobilize people to getting involved, because it's not always easy to you know, show a picture of yourself with such a sign. You can get really, you know, bashed and even threatened and so on by these, like, you know, nationalist groups and so on, which is happening already. So what we did, we started by taking our own pictures first, and the pictures of our friends and everyone in these organizations who formed the coalition. That's how we just like put it first out there and saying, okay, this is us, we're doing it, so you can join us. We used Facebook a lot. We made this page and we invited everyone that we knew. We even like researched like which are the groups or other pages which have like similar, you know, viewpoints as ours, so we kind of invited them to join as well. And another thing that I think was also important is that we invited a lot of people from the public life, like public figures, like singers, actors, intellectuals, and so on, and asked them like if they were willing to support us, which a lot of them did. So this got us more of like public visibility in the campaign. And for the first period, we were the ones who had to go out there and, you know, invite people to join, to send their pictures and so on. But then when it kind of took off, then it just started coming by itself. Then we were approached by different organizations, by a lot of like youth associations, high school students associations and so on, who just kind of started, you know, doing it on their own, sending us their pictures on. And social media was the most important tool, definitely, in this process, because that's what we used a lot through this you know, sharing and inviting and so on. This is how the word kind of spread out. And another thing, because we were not covered that much in the mainstream media, who are kind of under very strict political control of different parties, you do not have this, you know, free pass if you're doing something that's, you know, objectionable from their side of the view. Online portals were also very important, because this was something that was interesting to them. I think it was probably like the largest photo campaign ever. We have around 2,000 these like photos sent to us already. So this was interesting to them, and they kind of reported on this a lot. So these two media outlets, so to speak, social media and online portals, were most important for kind of mobilizing, first informing, and then mobilizing and empowering people to join into this campaign.
Yeah, I have to say that I saw the campaign when I was in Sarajevo last time, and I liked it so much. It's perfect. It almost made me sorry that we don't have a similar problem in the Czech Republic to apply the campaign too.
Don't be.
Thank you so much for that insight. Tijana, I will have to go online and do a little research on this campaign, so I can visualize it a lot easier. So we're almost running out of time here, but I would just like to also, you know, point out that you know, mobile phones, technology, the internet, social media, it provides a powerful opportunity for citizens to not only inform themselves, but also be critical of their local governments or their local officials and what they are doing. They can also, you know, be used to report human rights violations, corruptions, poor service delivery. I do think it's important that for us who work in these kind of areas, that we learn to exploit these resources, but also to be able to transmit to other people the potential and the importance that they have, but also try to combine it, you know, with well-designed programs offline in order to create impacts, you know, beyond the internet, beyond Twitter, Facebook, social media, so that we can actually start changing our communities and our, you know, our environment. And with this said, I would like to give you guys, you know, the last couple of minutes, 5 minutes. If you guys would like to give any closing statements before we have to be wrapping this up. So if you want, Tijana, we can start with you, and then we can go ahead with Kamil.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much the main points have been said already. I mean, about the benefits and the risks of online activism. One thing that we did not mention, which I think is very important, is that online world is being used a lot in very negative ways, which are not that much in focus. For example, in Bosnia, in particular, but not just here, just in the whole region, we have this explosion of hate speech online. It's really it's massive. It's everywhere. It's on YouTube comments. It's on portals, news comments. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere. So, and this thing is not being regulated. I mean, the internet itself is not regulated in the way that the traditional media are regulated. So, if you publish a false statement, or if you publish, I don't know, something that's a threat to someone's life and so on. If you're a traditional media such as television, there are like legal mechanisms which someone can, use to hold you accountable for what you did. Such a thing does not exist in the online world, and a lot of times when you raise this topic, people say, "Oh, it's censorship," but that's not actually what's in case here. The thing is that there is an actual outburst of hate speech, which includes also death threats and really horrible things, which is not being tackled in any way. And this is something that I feel when we talk about online activism, that I do see projects that are being done to kind of stop hate speech, or I don't know, misogyny or sexism and so on. So I think that this is something that needs to be worked more in the future in terms of online activism to kind of tackle this issue.
Yes, I agree with you. I do feel that sometimes social media is not used in the right way or in the correct way. And again, how do you regulate something and not fall into the category of censorship, or trying to put a restraint on freedom of expression? I do feel that is something that needs to be definitely carefully explored and talked about as well. Kamil?
Yeah, maybe I would like to continue where Tijana stopped. One of the things that I didn't really see any projects on, and this would be interesting for some other activists to do, and I think it would be crucial in the future, is to develop some tools or strategies how to form an online debate, basically, because there's more and more communication online. There are projects on drafting legislation involving voters. Political parties use various tools to talk to their members and stuff like that. But I haven't really seen a very good tool or a strategy that would really make that would enable, say, small or even a large group of people to easily form a coherent opinion or some kind of output, like a paper or a material, stuff like that. And I think this is going to be more and more important in the future. So if there's a good project on that, I would like to see it.
Thank you, Kamil. Yes, definitely. That would be a very interesting project, and maybe someone out there in the audience or one of us will, get started on that sooner rather than later. And just before we go, then I would just like to, once again, thank you guys for actually sharing, this time with us and your experiences and your insights. I would also, like to remind people of the power of information, the power of being able to access all this information through online technologies, and also, when we do use online technologies, we have to, like Tijana was previously saying, we have to keep trying to use them for good and to reach more people, to give marginalized people a voice through all of these new tools that we have, instead of trying to use them for hate speech or, false statements against other people, and just kind of keep with this conflict that seems to not end. And with that said, I would also like to thank, once again, the Hurford Foundation for making this possible, the audience who joined us today, and, of course, the panelists who are here this morning to share their experiences again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.